Okay, this is the third prototype actually of the Tooth Fairy box that we made. That was a piece of blue birch that I used. I cut a 4 inch, actually about a 4.5 inch length of that, put it in the lathe and turned it into a cylinder that was about 2¼ inches in diameter and 4 inches long with a tenon on one end. Then set the tenon in a scroll chuck, and with a 1.5 inch Forstner bit, I drilled a hole that was 1¼ inches deep, and that was for the tea light that I would insert in the bottom. The particular tea light I used had a flame on it, so it needed to be a little deeper hole. Then cut some grooves in the cylinder near what's going to be the bottom of the fairy box and sanded it a little bit. Um, then turned it around and set it in the jaws. And I set the jaws so they would basically fit in one of the grooves. Turned out that didn't leave any scratches on the cylinder, which worked really well. Once it was mounted in the chuck, I was able to cut off the tenon. And then I could drill, once I did that, I could shape the lid and put a little decoration on the lid. Put about a 1/4 inch tenon on the lid, and then cut the lid off, set that aside, then drilled out the main cavity for the tooth to be placed in using a 1 5/8 inch Forstner bit. And I drilled that down to about a 1/4 inch from the hole that I had drilled in the bottom. And then I took a 3/4 inch Forstner bit and drilled on through so that I had basically a hole all the way from the bottom tea light cavity up into the cavity that would hold the tooth. Then I took the lid, put it back on with a little bit of Scott towel to kind of hold it in place. I'd cut some additional grooves in the cylinder, cut a groove on the lid of the box, did some sanding, put on some lacquer sealer, and this is kind of what it looks like after I'd got done with that. The bottom of the box has a tea light that fits in, as you can see here, and you can access the battery compartment and the little light switch. I drilled some holes around the side of the box and where the grooves are to let the light come through, and then I laser engraved a tooth cartoon figure on the lid of the box. And here you can see the completed box. The 3 grooves that you see there in the middle of the box are the ones that have the holes drilled in them to let the light through. Wasn't real happy with the proportions of this box. It does kind of follow the golden rule, the golden rectangle, but it just looks too tall. Painted the inside of the box white to provide a little bit more reflectivity for the light. This is a movie, and you can see the light shining through. This was the test that I did in the dark, and it works fairly well. I mean, actually it looks brighter than this when you are in the dark with it. And then magically, the Tooth Fairy converted this box to a gator color, orange and blue. Couldn't figure out how that happened, but once the lights came back on, I had an orange and blue fairy box. And this is another picture of it with the lid off. Again, I wasn't real happy with the proportions here. I'm going to play with that a little bit when I make the final version of this box. But I think there'd be somebody in my family that probably would want to use this. So it does provide a place for the tooth, and it provides some light. If you go to our blog, you can see some history about the Tooth Fairy. So if you like this, please subscribe and go to our blog and read some more about the Tooth Fairy. It's an interesting bit of history that we have.